By the late 1700s, the British Empire had a problem. It could not stop drinking tea. Tea had gone from an exotic curiosity to a national obsession in under a century. Every social class, from dock workers to dukes, wanted it, and there was only one place on earth that produced it in the quantity Britain needed: China. The problem was payment. China wanted almost nothing Britain made. Not wool, not clocks, not manufactured goods. The Qing court considered European products largely beneath consideration. There was exactly one thing China would reliably accept in exchange for tea, silk, and porcelain: silver. For decades, British silver flowed east in a river that never reversed direction. Economists at the time watched the empire's bullion reserves drain toward China with something close to panic. Britain was, in the most literal financial sense, addicted to a product it could not pay for sustainably. In 1793, Britain sent a formal diplomatic mission to Beijing, led by Lord Macartney, hoping to open normal trade relations and close the imbalance through negotiation. The Qianlong Emperor's response has become one of the most quoted rejections in diplomatic history. China, he wrote, possessed all things in abundance and had no need for British manufactures. The door closed. The silver kept draining. So the East India Company, which held a royal monopoly over British trade in Asia, found a different solution. Not a product China wanted, a product China could be made to need. In the fertile river plains of Bengal, under direct East India Company administration, opium poppies began covering land that had once grown food crops. The company did not sell the opium directly into China, since that trade was formally illegal under Chinese law. Instead, it auctioned the drug in Calcutta to private merchants, who smuggled it into Chinese ports along the coast, paid Chinese buyers in silver, and brought that silver straight back to fund the tea trade. The mechanism was elegant, in the coldest possible sense of that word. Britain never had to touch the smuggling directly. The company simply manufactured the supply and let a chemical, not a cannon, do the work of reversing an empire's balance of payments. By the 1830s, the numbers had become almost impossible to comprehend. Somewhere between 4 and 12 million people across China were regularly using opium. Entire provinces along the coast saw the drug move from curiosity to crisis within a single generation. And for the first time in the relationship, the flow of silver reversed. It began draining out of China into British hands. To understand why this worked with such devastating efficiency, you have to understand what opium actually does to the human brain. The drug binds to specific receptors in the nervous system, the same receptors the body uses for its own natural pain relief and reward chemicals. In the short term, this produces a powerful sense of relief and euphoria, but the brain adapts quickly. With repeated use, it reduces its own natural production of these chemicals and becomes less sensitive to the drug's effects, a process called tolerance. The user needs more of the substance simply to feel normal, let alone euphoric. Stop taking the drug at that point, and the body does not simply return to its prior baseline. It swings hard in the opposite direction, into a state of physical and psychological withdrawal that can be extremely severe. The person is no longer choosing to use the drug for pleasure. They are using it to avoid a biological punishment their own body has learned to inflict on them. This is not a moral failing. It is a predictable, well-documented biological mechanism. And the merchants funding this trade in the 19th century did not need to understand the neuroscience to exploit it perfectly. They only needed to observe, over and over, that once a customer started, that customer rarely stopped. By 1839, the Chinese government had seen enough. A newly appointed imperial commissioner named Lin Zexu arrived in Canton with direct authority from the Daoguang emperor to end the trade by force if necessary. He blockaded foreign merchants inside their own trading compound until they surrendered their opium stockpiles, then oversaw the destruction of more than 20,000 chests of the drug, dissolved in seawater and lime in specially dug trenches along the coast. Lin also wrote a formal letter addressed directly to the young Queen Victoria, asking in essence how a nation that strictly forbade opium use within its own borders could justify flooding another country with the same substance for profit. The letter reportedly never reached the Queen through official channels. Whether or not it was ever read, the moral argument it contained changed nothing about what happened next. Britain did not respond to the destruction of the opium as a nation confronting a scandal. It responded as a nation confronting a business loss. Parliament debated the matter and the authorized military action. And in 1840 a British fleet arrived off the Chinese coast to enforce by armed force, if necessary, the continued right to sell the drug. The First Opium War lasted 2 years. Chinese forces, still using many of the naval and military technologies of an earlier era, were decisively outmatched by British steam-powered gunboats and modern artillery. The war ended in 1842 with the Treaty of Nanking, the first of what Chinese historians would later collectively call the Unequal Treaties. China ceded Hong Kong to Britain outright. It opened 5 additional ports to British trade under terms dictated almost entirely by the victor. It granted British subjects extraterritoriality, meaning they could commit crimes on Chinese soil and be tried only under British law in British courts. And crucially, the treaty said nothing at all about stopping the opium trade. If anything, the war had settled the question of whether Britain could sell the drug by force. It could. A second war, fought jointly with France in the late 1850s, extended the arrangement further still, formally legalizing the opium trade inside China for the first time. What had begun as a smuggling operation conducted through intermediaries had become an internationally sanctioned commercial right, backed by the full military weight of the world's most powerful navy. The pattern at the center of this entire episode of history is worth naming precisely because it did not end in the 19th century. A trade imbalance was solved not by producing something the other side genuinely wanted, but by engineering a biological dependency the other side could not refuse. Profit was extracted not from voluntary demand, but from a chemically enforced one. And when the target government tried to stop it, the solution imposed from outside was not negotiation. It was force, followed by treaties written entirely by the winning side. Almost 2 centuries later, a strikingly similar pattern unfolded inside the United States, this time without a foreign empire or a naval blockade required at all. Beginning in the mid-1990s, a pharmaceutical company aggressively marketed a powerful opioid painkiller, downplaying its addictive potential to doctors and regulators despite internal data suggesting otherwise. Prescriptions rose sharply. Addiction rates followed. By the time the scale of the crisis became undeniable, hundreds of thousands of Americans had died from opioid overdoses, and an entire domestic industry had been built, quite legally, around the same biological mechanism that once reversed the British Empire's trade deficit with China. No gunboats were required this time. No treaty had to be signed. The mechanism did not need an empire behind it. It only needed a supply chain, a marketing budget, and the same unchanged human nervous system that made Lin Zexu's opium trenches necessary in 1839. This channel began with a simple observation. History repeats itself because human nature does not change. The story of the Opium Wars is often told as a story about drugs, or about 19th century imperialism, or about a uniquely cruel chapter that belongs safely in the past. It is really a story about something colder and more durable than any of those framings suggest. Once you understand that a human dependency can be engineered, and that engineered dependency can be extraordinarily profitable, the incentive to engineer it again does not require an empire, or a war, or even any particular malice. It only requires the same discovery the East India Company made in Bengal 200 years ago, that the most reliable customer in the world is one who no longer has the biological freedom to say no.